Welcome, good evening. Welcome to the Hanover Selectboard meeting of, would you believe it or not, May 1st. Yay, 2023. And today was a typical May day, but maybe we'll, June will come, I guess, I don't know. Anyway, we're here tonight to have some fun and do good work for the town. It looks like the most exciting part of tonight might be public comment for a change. This is good. And it's always just our first order of business, and it is our practice to provide an opportunity for public comment at the start of each meeting. Comments or questions should be directed to me as chair and are limited to 5 minutes so we can keep the meeting going. If your comment is on an agenda item, please hold it until the agenda item is taken up. Responses, if any, will be provided at my discretion. Please come to the microphone and state your name and address before you speak. Is there anyone here for public comment?
Yes.
All right, fight it out. Two paper tails and all, not rocks and papers. Good evening.
Good evening. I'm Jane Masters.
Hi, Jane.
I live at 15 Willow Spring Circle, and I have 2 concerns just to bring forward to see if there's anything you guys can do or perhaps I can do to help. One is cell phone reception in this town, as you might all be aware, is horrible. Verizon does not respond to any queries, offers to construct cell phone towers on cars, anything. So I don't know what the town or the state can do to help us, but it's really ridiculous in this day and age in a college town like this that we don't have it. So if there's something you can do or I can do or we can do together, sign me up.
Good.
The next one, Verona. Verona. I live on Willow Spring Circle. When I first moved here 14 years ago, I checked maybe in 2016, and I was told it was budgeted to put a sidewalk in 2018, and that as things happen, it got deferred, and then the pandemic came. I understand that there's money budgeted, federal or state money, to put a sidewalk in on Verona and connect it to the Girl Trail. I would love for that to happen before somebody runs over a child or a stroller or a bicycle. There's lots of traffic. I know the Bike and Pedestrian Committee has done studies in the past. They had a good idea of how many cars and pedestrians were there. Is there any movement on that? I would love to know. And again, I'm the board chair at Willow Spring Circle Condominiums. I can get 28 people to write you letters if that would help, but those are my comments.
Okay, let's just deal with those one at a time. Alex, we were briefly talking about this before the meeting started. I didn't know there was cell phone service in Hanover.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah, you wouldn't know. It would be hard to find out. And so it is on the radar. It is something I know there's been conversations for years, both Verizon and AT&T, trying to figure out what to do. I think the town has a few potential roles. One is as a leasing space on public property for additional antenna, things of that nature, which is something I know since I've been here, we've had at least one company come out and go up our tower and check things out and see. I'm not sure. I think there might need to be some more major construction to support whatever they need, but that so far I don't think has landed with something new. I think the other thing that we can do is be an advocate to state and federal, and I think that your offer to get some people organized, I think if this is something on the list, not super short term, but if we can figure out, have some conversations with the phone companies, if they're open to discussing in more amicable detail, great. And if not, perhaps we can get people in the community who are paying customers to kind of come together a little bit. But it's not only a kind of convenience issue, but it's obviously a major safety issue. And just today I'm finishing editing our next Hanover Happenings episode, which I'll do a quick plug for the preview, which is our 911 dispatchers at the police department. And of course, part of the challenge that they face is people having an emergency and not being able to get through, or not having good enough cell coverage to take advantage of the E911 features that exist if you have even a modicum of good data coverage, which allows responders to see your location and all sorts of other stuff that really help. And there are areas in Hanover where you can't do that. And that is a safety
I'm
issue.
aware.
So, yeah, right, so, yeah, right, you know.
Yeah.
So I don't think there's a short-term fix, but it's definitely on radars here. But I'm not sure what the solution is, but I think it's something that I can provide some updates on as we try to figure out this summer. It is a big problem.
Yeah, thank you.
And
Verona?
What was the,
Verona sidewalk, it's on the DPW's list of things to do this year, but they're down staff by 60. They only have 60% of their staff.
5 people.
So
60% of a sidewalk would be better than none.
it needs to, the money that we set aside to do that, it needs to be spent before the end of, I think it's FY '25. So it's gonna happen within the next 2 years, hopefully
The
this year.
next 2 years?
Or we lose the money.
yeah, and I think just based on where it is on the list of things, that if it's not done this year, that I would think it probably would be done next year. It's close. We're going over our sort of DPW work list for the summer, and and I asked our public works director to make an estimate about how far they think they're going to get. We have 5 vacancies in the highway division, and so.
I misspoke, it has to be built by June 30th, 2027, so that's actually 4 years.
Oh, good.
So, but
Thank you. Anything more I can do?
on that, I mean, I think we're all advocating for it to happen, and the money's been allocated, and it's part of, we see that as an important link relative to the growth.
Yeah, I mean, if you know anybody with a CDL, send them my way.
Okay, thank you.
Or who wants one.
Thank you.
Okay, not me.
Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
Who won the next rock, scissors, and
Okay, this is just a brief introduction. Terry Callahan, 9 North Park Street. Wanted to introduce Mr. Chairman, members of the Select Board, Mr. Town Manager. I am pleased to introduce Mr. Emron Rasuli, who is seated.
please come forward. Come up to the seat.
Yeah, come on, Emron. Emron and his extended family of 10 will be living in Norwich, spending a little time with us. But through a couple of agencies in Vermont, they'll be, he went to Hanover High School today, he'll be attending starting tomorrow. So he's excited as part of Dresden. So we're excited to have him as part of our community. The other eight members of his family are arriving next week, and the final member the week after. But they were evacuated from Afghanistan during the fall of Kabul by Polish Special Forces. They've been in Warsaw, awaiting processing by various authorities that finally has come through after much delays. Emron is, I think, excited to be here. I tried to tell him this was perhaps not the most edifying meeting, but he was very anxious to understand how local government works. So he insisted upon coming tonight, and it's my pleasure to introduce him.
Thank you. Welcome. Welcome.
Thank you. So.
Look forward to your family joining you.
Thank you so much.
Any comments you'd like to make?
Sorry?
Any comments you would like to make? If you want to do that in your own native tongue, you could do that.
His English is, even in the last few days, his English is getting pretty
All right. Give it a try.
It's great that we have a board who can help the people and who can work and make the community better and better. It's just great. I'm just curious about how the things are going to work, and it was very nice to meeting you all guys. And thank you so much for having me.
Well, welcome to Vermont and New Hampshire. We're
And
glad
if
you're
you
here.
really want some entertainment, a week from tomorrow night is our town meeting where people come together and discuss past budgets and discuss, how many articles are there? 30?
20-some-5.
A lot of questions are posed and we vote yay or nay. It's kind of entertaining.
It's like from 7 to 11 in your day, so
PM.
take it, yes. I did say it, yes. Right.
Good. Well, welcome. Thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you, Carrie.
Thank you.
All right.
So Kari Asmus of 2 Sawsville Road. I was here, I think, on the 10th of April, and asked about Mustard Day, which is Hanover's Memorial Day. And I wanted to give an update, which is that basically I think it's kind of at a standstill. I have asked, the concerns that have been brought up are financial, and I've said that, I would be happy to cover that. So please let me know what the amount is. But I've not been able to understand what the amount would be. And then there's the issue of staff time. And it was suggested that I should be in touch with staff, which I've tried. And staff sort of said, well, what is your role? And it's like, well, that's a good question, because as a private citizen, of course, I can't tell a staff member that they should do anything, and as a private citizen, I can't go around and make any commitments on behalf of the town. So it was really rather unclear, and I thought maybe part of the problem was that maybe we weren't clear on what we were really talking about, but this was a program from 2016, and I'm looking at this, and it's like, well, what are the dollar amounts? I mean, maybe there's an honorarium here someplace if we don't do the band. There are the flags. So I'm really having a hard time understanding the financial issue. And the other update is that I have talked to the troop leader. The Boy Scouts are prepared to, the Scouts, it's a co-ed troop, are prepared to replace the flags. They would be happy to lead the Pledge of Allegiance, to do the color guard. They are all set, and they said that some of the older Scout members have actually been asking, are we going to go back to Muster Day? So it's been important to some of those young people as well. And so I guess I'm just here, asking if, I don't know, for a little bit more leadership so that we can get this moving and happening for this Memorial Day, even if it is not with the band. So that would be my comment for tonight.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Can we respond to that?
Sure.
I guess if you're willing to pay for it and organize it, why can't we act on that? Like if John Sherman doesn't have the time or capacity or interest and town staff don't, and we have somebody in the community who does, can we say, go forth? Not that you necessarily want to do it, but.
Well, I mean, I can't order flags. I can't really order, cookies. I don't know, what time are we talking about? Is there a sound system? I have to say that there are some other people who, after I left here, said, let me know and I can help. But, like the next step was, to go into the Parks and Rec and meet, and it's just like, we've already exchanged, half a dozen emails, and now to have a meeting, and, I think that, given that the Scouts have already contacted, I don't know, it just, I don't really quite see whereas if I'm willing to pay for it, and the organization is really quite minimal for the time of meeting them with me and telling me how to do everything. And
in other words, it would be easier if Parks and Rec took the lead and you supported them.
I think so.
So, not to micromanage, but perhaps you could take this under advisement and get back to, it feels like a small thing to go forward.
I think the challenge is that this wasn't included in the budget for this year, and it's not included in the budget for next year. And so budgeting events of the event line has been squeezed for several years, and as we talked about a little bit, planning these things out, obviously so we can include money in the budget so we can allocate resources to bring the staff in or purchase the materials on the schedule that have been done in the past, but this event wasn't on the schedule for this year. And so the last minute sort of organization, when I talked to Parks and Rec, we were all interested in trying to figure out a way to make this happen, certainly in the future. That would be a lot easier. A couple weeks before the event, without it having been on the schedule, and without there having been any money allocated for it, and without any staff time being allocated for it, I mean, it's a huge challenge. And right now, our staff, and in 2 departments in particular, the Highway Department at Public Works and Parks and Rec, have a major slew of vacancies. The event position is vacant currently, and the priority on my book right now with Parks and Rec is trying to figure out how we can hire summer camp counselors so that we can run the summer camp that kids are already signed up for. And that was something that that was in the budget, that was part of the plan for the year. You know, I would say that this underscores the need for having a goal setting and planning process as part of the budget, so that it's not just numbers on a spreadsheet, but that everybody's actually on board with what the priorities and plans are for each department for the year. So, you know, I certainly, you know, I certainly think it's worth, and I know Liz you've talked to her and she's offered to meet, which is probably better than going back and forth over email. You know, I think that, you know, they're not in a particularly great place staffing-wise or budget-wise, and you know, we can definitely offer some support, but asking for a super last-minute change without the staffing or the funding is just hard to do.
The scouts have already reached out to them and are waiting for a response. That was before I showed up.
Let me break in. You're not gonna like my answer, but my thought is we need to respect our departments and what their capacities are and aren't in these times. If the rec department, and basically the message I got is that this event has perhaps lost critical mass from the past, and they do not have the staffing to support it this year. And I personally believe if we're going to do it, we should do it right, and it should be supported as a town event. And what we're being told is that's just not possible this year. So I'm ready to accept their judgment on this, and I know that's not the answer you want, but that's where my head is at. And it's not, to me, it's not a budget issue, it's a staffing issue, it's a commitment issue, and if we make this a priority in future years, then the town should get fully behind it and make it happen. But our rec department is telling us that's not really feasible this year, and I want to respect their judgment.
When and who made the decision that we should not have this?
When?
Yes.
We didn't make that as an overt decision. It didn't make it into the budget. It really didn't come to our ability, it didn't come to us till recently. I'm sorry, but it's not in the budget, and you made this request, and my answer is I think we should trust the judgment of our rec department that this is not a high priority event for this year, for this town. That's my position. Other members? And that's direct. I mean, I'm being direct.
I already let you know how I feel, so.
I'm happy to be overruled, but it's kind of where my head is at. Nancy?
I think it's a great opportunity for private-public partnership. I mean, Kari generously said that she would donate the funds. That's a private citizen coming forth saying, here are the funds. I think as she says, somebody needs to help you order flags because you're not able to order flags as a private citizen.
Last year, well, I could, but last year I know that the town supplied the flags, so in fiscal year '22. If the flags are already sitting there, and I've kind of asked, then do we need to buy them again? Who do I buy them from? The town has bought them in the past.
But couldn't all those details, I mean, if you met with Liz, which was the follow-up from the last meeting, which we did put in motion, couldn't we sort of run down the list of things and just kind of figure out if it's possible or not?
Well, it was almost like for all the time that we've gone through emails and that now we're talking about meeting, that I think when you look what a simple program it is, that it probably could be accomplished more efficiently. And I have to say, I did come last June, by the way.
I'm sure you did.
And said this.
Isn't this a face-to-face kind of thing, Kari? If you went tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock and knocked on Liz's door and
they said Tuesday morning was a possibility for both of them. And then that they're both going to sit down. So the three of us are going to sit down and talk instead of there being a couple of calls that need to be made. It just,
But I mean, but there's a list of things that you're suggesting are sort of easy to do, or that we should already have the supplies, and it just seems like this is just not a hard conversation to just sit back, right, and just sort of, or a phone call. And I mean, again, I think the back and forth over email is often not the way to resolve an issue or misunderstanding or a difference of perspective between multiple parties, and sometimes a really quick conversation can just do it. And it seemed like that was a good sort of next step there.
Our 5 minutes are up for public comment.
I already sat down once.
Thank you, Cory. So, Bill, you want to weigh in on this one, or?
Well, I don't think it's a budget issue. I think we could find a few $100s. It's the tasks. And I find anytime you run one of these things, it's more complex than we wish it was. So if it's just get the flags, if the Boy Scouts are going to be there, Scouts are going to be there, but then this long list of all these other players, I guess they're not going to happen. So it's going to be a very short modified program with the intent of recognition. That's all it is.
Yes.
So I think it's solvable, and for a couple $100, the town should be able to find it. But I don't know all the gory details but getting some flags between now and the end of the month, if we don't have them, I don't know why that's a big deal. And I don't know what you're talking about on flags. We're talking about 10, 20 little ones, big ones. I have no idea, but that's a detail that's probably been covered in prior years. It's the same old, whatever it is. Just get it done. So, but that's my reaction.
The board?
So do you have a meeting tomorrow morning?
I did not confirm that I was available.
Board, I think we decide that we direct, I guess is the right word, Public Works to make this happen, or we don't. So
The direction I gave so far was to talk with Kari and any other residents who might be interested and try to offer as much support as possible, understanding that they are under, like right at this exact moment is a super critical time for them. And understanding that, is there any support that we can provide now? And then going forward, let's talk about doing more.
Well, I think,
that was where I
again,
left off with them.
And I would just suggest for next year, regardless if it's in the budget or not, we should be able to pull it off.
And start planning further ahead of time.
Yeah, that's all, but for less than 30 days or whatever it is, I think you need to meet in the room and tick off all the issues and see what the problems are. And see if you can resolve them. If you can't, you can't, but that's all. But I'd leave it up to the staff to figure it out.
Yeah, I mean, it's staff. Staff knows how we feel. If you can make it happen, you can make it happen. If you can't, something.
And if it happens, it's a modified program.
okay.
Dartmouth might step up. I mean, they support their veterans and through ROTC, so.
Again, someone has to talk to someone there, and someone has to talk to it. It's all time. You got to commit and do it in the next couple of days, or it's not going to happen.
Okay, thank you. Is that clear direction? As clear as we can be. Okay. Next order of business is a review of the request for reallocation of supplemental highway and supplemental bridge aid funds. Peter's not here tonight?
Correct.
Okay.
I can, although it's a little wordy, but it should be straightforward.
I've gone through it, and I think we need to start at the end.
Okay.
Which is, what is it that you need from, not all the history of all the moving pieces, but what do you need from us
So
tonight?
basically, there's two different pieces, there's two different pots of money. One is the $219,000, and one is the $60,000, and those come together, and then there are three different projects in priority order to apply those funds to. And so the first priority project is, where are we? So this is the Rudsboro 3 Mile Road Bridge replacement, and then if there's leftover money, that goes to the LED streetlight conversion, and if there's leftover money from that, then that goes to the cross-country path between.
Okay, so I move that we allocate $219,869.96 to supplemental bridge aid, of supplemental bridge aid accepted on February 27th, 23, and reallocate up to $60,130.04 of the supplemental highway funding accepted on September 12th, 2022 to the replacement of the bridge near the intersection of Rudsboro and 3 Mile roads, with any remaining unexpected balance of highway aid not used to complete the LED streetlight replacement and bridge of bridge at Ridsboro and 3 Mile Roads reallocated to the cross-country path between Verona Street and Reservoir Road. I think that's the motion you need.
So second.
So second. Discussion? Bill?
These have all been discussed in the past.
Yep.
Trust Peter Kabaki's management of it, and I think we should approve it.
Okay. Further discussion?
I do have a question.
All right.
So Kari Asmussen, this time I will be wearing my finance committee hat. I remember, as you do, back a couple of town meetings ago, we passed a bond for bridges in the amount of $950,000, and if I understand correctly, we've drawn down $319,000 of it. The Finance Committee very much supported using those bonded funds because of the extraordinarily fortunate interest rate that we were able to get. And so the question is, I don't know whether we can draw more on that, but if that money is available for the bridge, and we may not have money for this cross-country trail because it is not eligible for the bond monies. Why are we not using the bond monies for the bridge for the purpose that we have the bond?
Correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that we plan to draw down all of that, but it only funded 4, not 5 bridges. And this is the 5th bridge that could not be accommodated within that 900 or 950,000.
Right.
So I think the answer is we plan to draw down that entire bond issue, but we came up 1 bridge short as costs escalated.
But so far we've only drawn down 319,000. So
That's possible, but they must be anticipating the rest of it for 4 bridges rather than 5.
Okay, thank you.
That's my understanding.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I should probably leave this one alone, but one question I did, is this cross-country path?
Yeah.
Do I read this correctly, that it's going to be costing the town $237,000 of our money to complete this Verona to Reservoir cross-country path?
You know, actually, I'm not sure that number. If you look at, I'm not sure. I think the 20% might be the 87,500, and it might be that last line. I would have to ask Pete.
Because if it is, I want to have a discussion about that. Because this money was this was a project originally requested, well, let's put it this way, the state had some money that they were looking for, huh?
The feds.
Was it federal money?
Yeah, it wasn't Jane or.
Yeah, federal money that they were looking for shovel-ready projects. And this was one of several that we presented to them, and this is the one they picked out.
Right.
And I assumed that this was a full grant.
No, it was always a 20%.
There was always a 20% match?
And we felt we could do it in-kind services, like we could prep the soil for
okay.
whatever, DPW. But this additional money, you're right, another 150,000 isn't what we expected.
But I think that includes the in-kind costs, would be my guess.
So we should understand, if the 237 is in kind, that's one thing. If it's 237 out of our pocket, that's another thing, right?
Do you want me to ask Pete for, my sense is that 150 might be the category that you were just describing, which is the in-kind category, and 87.5 is the actual cash contribution, but I can confirm that.
I just want to know where the money's coming from.
Okay. Can do that.
And did this project escalate to where it was no longer a nice gift from the feds, but a very expensive gift for the town?
Can happen sometimes.
It can happen.
Yeah.
I'll tell you my saltwater fish story sometime.
Did we vote?
We did vote. I brought this up after the
Sorry,
vote.
just.
Okay. Next order of business, review the request to abate water sewer bill on property located on 34 Rayton Road. This is the one that we discussed last time and put it back to. And so I move that we rebate, is it $1,555?
Yes.
For the water sewer bill for property at 34 Rayton Road as recommended by staff.
I'll second that.
And may we read the rest of it, because I think it's important that the homeowner access the customer portal to self-monitor flows.
Yep, this is a situation, we're not sure what happened, but last winter, a lot of water went through, when people were away, when they came back, they had a huge water bill. We never really did determine what the cause of it was,
It was last summer.
but we're bailing them out this time, but we're asking them to put in safeguards so we don't have to do this again.
And I can check that staff is recommending this, because that was one of the questions last time, is it was presented a little, and the homeowners have already signed up for that portal. So they've already met that condition.
Okay, but this is the recommendation of
Yes,
recommendation of
that's
staff coming to us
To
now.
abate it, yes.
Okay,
Yep.
so there's a motion to abate, was there a second? Can't remember. Did anyone second?
Yes, I second it.
Nancy seconded. Further discussion?
Yes, and the comments from staff also said that if we find that this happens again, we will not entertain.
That's correct.
Potential. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay. Next order of business,
Clear to the homeowner.
any further discussion on that? Did we vote?
I think,
Huh?
no, we did not vote.
Oh, any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the abatement?
Aye.
It's abated.
It may be worth noting that all people who are on water and sewer can sign up for that portal, and that it's important for residents to monitor those things, because this is an extreme, this is $1,500 worth of water that just was flushed down the storm drain, and my sense is we shouldn't be doing this in the future. That of course, I'll be the one that ends up doing it, but I put on public notice that it's our responsibility as water and sewer users to monitor those things, just like we monitor our heat or make sure there's gas in our car. We shouldn't be wasting water.
Correct. Further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Did that, aye. We did it twice, so
We voted twice?
We voted twice.
Oh, well, it is two abatements.
It's very much approved.
Okay, so,
Don't give them twice the no.
Yes, just one check, one refund.
One refund.
one refund. I move that we accept the elderly exemption for 17 Etna Road as presented by staff and recommended by staff.
I'll second that motion.
Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
I move that we accept the veterans credit for 4 Hunter Lane and 6 Bridgman Road as recommended by staff.
I'll second that.
Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
I move that we accept the current use application for 71 Stevens Road as recommended by staff.
That was,
I'll second that,
just catching up here.
17 acres.
Discussion?
Just clarify, what is current use? Thank you.
Current use
All
application.
right, I got to the page, sorry.
Further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, just as a reminder, we've got to find a way, these used to be dealt with administratively.
Yeah, unfortunately, as we go through some of these, there's more and more stuff that our attorney is advising has to come to the select board. So something I have not gotten ready to bring up, but I'll do it just because now we're talking about it, is that we may consider asking you all if you want to do a consent agenda on future agendas where we put some of these business items as one item and as one motion. So there would be certain things that get voted on separately, and I might put the reallocation of bridge funds in that, but, the veterans credits, these things that you would delegate to staff, but there's not an ability to, we're finding in some of these cases. There's a few more that are gonna pop up, unfortunately, which is not my preference either.
Now,
but-
the consent agenda would,
And then we can organize it into one motion. You can pull things out if you want to. They're all on the agenda and you want the public to see them, but it just makes it go a little quicker.
I would recommend that strongly.
Okay, so if
Does that work for you?
we can, we'll try that next time and probably tweak the formatting a little.
Okay. We need to set the polling hours. So I move we set the polling hours for town meeting May 9th, 2023, between 7 and 7 for the meeting, and then the business meeting from 7 till whatever.
I'll second that.
Events.
Just, I think it's worth mentioning to the public that the entrance will be different.
Yeah.
You go through the back of the gym, you park behind the high school. It worked well for the school board. It's just a change, and sometimes change is hard, but it works. So just as the forewarn the public.
Yeah.
They had good signage. I assume we'll use the same signage for,
Coming right up, May 9th, that's,
Is that also for the evening session?
yeah, you'll, everything, you come in the back, one door. Yeah.
I think the request was made to try to keep masses out of the entryway there.
Right, the hallway there in
Yeah,
front.
the
Central
school,
Hall.
yeah.
That's the whole purpose, is to keep
Yeah, during the day.
those open.
During the
those-
day, but at night, we're still going in on the,
Oh,
what side would that be?
That-
South side?
at the back, I call it the back door.
The back door.
It directly faces the parking lot,
Yeah,
right?
That's
Yeah.
just a football field, yeah.
because that's a set, well, I'm
That-
assuming, you should verify that, but just because everything's set up for people to come in that way to check them in.
It's definitely for the day, I would assume for the night as well, because the whole idea is
Because-
just sectioning off this activity from the rest of the school.
Because what happens at 6:45, some people are coming in for the 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. vote, and then others are coming in for the night vote, so if they come in opposite doors, you have chaos, be my suggestion. But, so you better confirm.
I think it's gonna all be through that
Yeah.
entrance, yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure it will be.
Yeah.
Do we have clarity from the high school that what was the customary parking lot in front of that soccer field is actually in use? Because we're going to have a lot of poll workers looking for parking places, but we don't want them parking in the back of the school where they used to park.
I'm not sure where the poll workers are gonna park, but I can ask our clerk and just make sure. I'm sure they are, but I can just double check and make sure that they're.
I think there will be a parking issue,
Yeah.
because we're now,
We should give parking passes to our poll workers
for
for the day.
for town parking.
Yeah.
To just park
Meeting
anywhere,
park, meeting
anywhere
park.
other than where
Yeah.
we want
I mean,
visitors.
I imagine, knowing who's in charge of this, they've probably figured out the parking thing,
Yeah.
and we don't have to micromanage that, but
I'll double
as a
check.
select board, if that's what it takes to make sure the poll workers can have a place to park for 2 hours while they do their service,
Absolutely.
then we should
And for
accommodate that, I think,
and for
don't you
just,
think?
in general, people coming to vote.
Right, because we don't want to anger our citizens by not finding a parking place when they come to vote.
So I think we should be generous that day.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yep,
all right. So did we vote on setting the polling hours?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Correct.
7 to 7, 7 to whenever. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
Can I just clarify then? I don't know if you're going to come to this, but we have to set our hours.
Yes, I was thinking, that's next. Who's there when?
Okay,
And I'm not sure I'm allowed to be there
No, you
You're
guys
not.
aren't,
you're not.
at all,
You
except
can
to
be.
come vote.
No, I can. Yeah, I can.
you guys aren't running. Oh, that's good, because I was thinking there are only 3 of us for the whole day.
So,
But, I mean, again, to clarify, based on the information we received, which the state leadership would say that we need multiple select board members there at 7 a.m. to start the process, which we serve no added value in my opinion, but if you have to tick off a box, I'll be there. So then we have shifts. You're not counted. Athos normally takes the last one. So it's assuming he's available. Nancy, you always like to take
I like the 7
first
to
one.
10, yeah.
So.
If it's possible.
do it, Bill, work on it.
Basic math here, so we're dividing by 4, 12, that's 3-hour shifts.
Yeah.
So 7 to 10?
Yes, sir. If it's amenable with everybody else.
Well, just Joanna, what would you prefer? The next one or the afternoon one?
I guess the afternoon one.
Good, because I prefer the other one, but I was trying to be nice. So I'll take 10 to 1. You'll take 1 to 4. And Athos would be 4 to 7.
Okay. And who can be there?
At night,
We need a
we'll leave
quorum.
at night.
We need a quorum there at 7.
You need,
so just, I mean, and there might be someone who may want to touch base with the moderator. The direction I got from him was entire select board and opening quorum throughout the day.
quorum, we've never had a quorum during the day.
I know.
We're not gonna have a
We're not
quorum.
gonna have a
We're not gonna have a quorum. We're gonna have one person, and we're gonna be able to get a quorum if we need one. Everybody will be on call. So, but you need a quorum to start off the meeting.
Yes, I've got entire board to start off, but
Oh, that's, I think you get a quorum.
I think. Am I allowed to be, I can't be there at 7. I can't be there at 7. I'm not allowed to be there. I'm not allowed to be there.
And Athos won't be able to make it, I can tell you that, just because he's probably.
I can be there at 7.
Yeah, I can be there at 7 a.m.
So we'll have a quorum.
Nancy?
And
you got a
Nancy's gonna,
quorum?
so you'll have a quorum.
And then at the end of the night,
And at the end of the night, we have to
For
sign.
we'll
town
all be
meeting.
there.
We'll all be there for town
Stay as
meeting.
long as we want.
And then we have to sign whenever the paperwork's completed that evening.
Okay. Thank
All
you.
right, so to confirm, we have 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. Nancy, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Bill, 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. Joanna, and 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. Athos.
And you got 3 people, you have a quorum to open up?
Yeah.
And we'll all be
Joanna,
there, we'll all be
Nancy,
there
and
to
I.
close down.
And we'll be there to close down, so that's not a problem.
Okay. Good, thank you. Next order of business, appointment of ballot clerks. We received a list, a wonderful list of ballot clerks that we have to appoint. Is that the right word? So I move the appointment of the ballot clerks recommended to us in our package.
Second?
I didn't add them all up, but there's a good number,
Yeah.
20 plus. There was a second, all those in favor?
All right,
Aye.
with
32.
gratitude.
All
Yes.
32 of them.
32, yeah. There was Alex did a great podcast of what it takes to put on an election. And I learned a lot by listening to it. I thought I knew a bit, but I didn't know all of that. And it's just amazing, the team effort and the number of people that get involved, and we're fortunate to have them.
We are.
Okay, what's next?
Banner requests.
Banner requests. We have 2 banner requests. I move that we accept the banner requests from the Montshire Museum of Science and the Walk to End Alzheimer's. These have all been cleared and discussion. I need a second for that. Bill,
I'll second it.
discussion?
I just had discussion, I'd say, maybe these could be in the consent also.
Okay.
We've had this conversation that if the staff says it's okay, we're just rubber stamping it.
Right.
It doesn't make any sense to spend more.
Well, maybe that's the dividing line to start with, is the things that feel like the rubber stamps. If you're taking staff recommendation, those can go on the consent agenda.
I mean, it take a minute, but
Well,
we,
this
each
is
time,
a rubber stamp. I mean,
Right.
yeah, it's always very clear, it's just,
We never take down.
You're not overturning, right.
We never take down
Well,
people's
we rely
banners.
on staff to know that that
Safe
A,
and
meets the
functional.
criteria and we have room.
Right.
We rely on staff to know those 2 things. Okay, so we had a motion and we had a second. Do we have all those in favor?
aye.
Aye, they pass. Okay, the minutes of March 28th, 3rd, and 10th. I move their acceptance as a group. I went through them and I really did not have any comment. I did not have comments. Anybody have any?
Well,
Comments?
I'll second.
You'll second, yes. Any comments, any changes, deletions, additions?
I think we had, previously we did, and we have resolved all those, so
Okay.
I'm okay with the current draft.
Anybody have any other changes, additions, deletions? Ready to vote? All those in favor? Aye. They pass.
Mr. Chairman, may we go back to the donations to the Etna Library?
Yes, oh, I missed one.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, we had wonderful donations to the Etna Library. Nancy, do you have those right handy available to you? Did you move those?
Have it. Can't find the detail.
I have one from the Garden Club. And another one from the halls, I believe.
The halls and also the Balcombs, Jerry and Pat Balcomb. A nice check in.
Wow, I mean, I got 3 here. I didn't see the
Yeah,
3.
Yes.
Okay, okay,
Those are
so,
for the library.
I'll put that on.
okay, we've had 2 wonderful donations one from the Hanover Garden Club to the Etna Library, appreciation, and one from,
From
Barbara
Jerry
and Tom.
and Pat Balton to,
Tom and Barbara Hall were to for the Etna Library.
yes, and so,
And also was the one from the Hanover Garden Club.
and my understanding was there was $100 given by Jerry and Pat Balton to the Etna Library as well.
I don't want to, okay, if that's the case, great. So let's accept those. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And then we have one from the Jack and Dorothy Burns Foundation, if I'm correct,
Yes.
for the Parks and Recreation Program. I move that we accept that generous donation.
I'll second that.
Discussion? Hearing none.
There's,
Joanna, you have,
yeah,
you okay?
I second that, I agree.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
There's other funding too that I don't really know what the AT mural project is, but we have funding from the Atwoods and the Youngs. And looks like the school district for the AT mural project. What is that?
I'm not sure, I could guess, but it would be no better than,
What
I'm
I
not
have
sure.
guessed. What I have guessed in my mind, like
Right.
my guess is that we're doing an Appalachian Trail mural somewhere. Yeah, we should probably know more about that.
I can find out more about it.
I think it's between, it's over.
Please come step forward and help us.
What?
Please come forward, introduce yourself and help us.
I don't know that much about it, but Bill Young's been working on it, and the way I understand the part that he's working on is between, near the high school in front of the Black Center, because the AT crosses there, and that's where people get confused and walk. They walk to where the sidewalk ends on Lebanon Street. It's where it ends.
Okay.
Yeah. Where they should go across the community center sidewalk.
So the donation is towards signage?
It's a mural.
A mural?
Yeah, a mural. There's some Hanover artists working on it with the art teacher, creating the design. And I think the idea for now is just to do paint, but maybe to eventually step it up and have some real placemaking and stuff that's more permanent that we wouldn't have to worry about fading. But, I mean, the good thing is on a sidewalk, it's not being like hopefully driven over by cars, so it tends to last longer than like paint on our roads.
So I think it's fine that we accept $500 in donation on behalf of the project, but I think it would be good that if we're putting a sign or painting sidewalks that are DPW and rec department are aware of what's.
Yeah, Bill is
So-
coordinating
They might
with.
be.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Just because
he
I
was
don't know,
coordinating
yeah.
with the rec department in the high school, and he's met with Peter Kawaki.
Great.
And Peter is actually like, this would be a great thing to do and say like tile or something eventually, or brick or something more permanent. And I think they're also trying to figure out, you know, like we used to have that sign in front of near the town hall actually, that marked out the AT, and now we don't. Like, where could we put a cool sign? Maybe, I think the dream is a boulder, like engraved with, you know, something cool and big and solid and that will last. Or a sign that's similar to the one in front of the Hanover Inn.
Yeah.
Because that's at least clarifying where it is, and which is actually not by the Hanover Inn, but you know, where the Appalachian Trail goes, and sort of, you know, celebrating that as well as guiding hikers to where they're going, which is usually to the co-op. And then I think there's new showers figured out somewhere, but I didn't quite follow the whole conversation.
Well, there are showers at the rec department building, so.
Yeah, and they're getting like loaner clothes, so the hikers don't have to hang out in their towels while they wash all their clothes. So that should be fun. And apparently they're quite festive. Often tutus are involved and stuff like that.
So all of this is happening because the rec department is gathering these clothes?
I don't know who's gathering the clothes, but it's not the rec department, but.
It would probably be at a future meeting, maybe some clarification on what's
Yeah.
going on, just so I feel like we should just understand what's going on. 'Cause what's going through my mind is whatever donation is going for something on the sidewalk,
Right.
which is very nice.
Yeah.
But as the sand hits and the cleaners, the scrubber goes by to plow the snow and all, I just would like them to understand, I don't think their mural's gonna last very long. So.
Yeah, I think
so
they
if they
do
understand that, then
Yeah.
that's fine, and everyone else agrees, but it's not gonna, something more permanent probably makes sense.
Yeah.
That's all.
That was Peter Kovaci's feedback too. I think the thought is it's gonna last a lot longer than the chalk that gets put down. So like right now, they draw it out.
Right.
And every time it rains, you have to redo it. So, but the hikers come every day, even in the rain. So, yeah.
Okay,
Baby steps.
thank you.
Thanks, Jim.
Okay, so I apologize for not being on top of this one. So I believe we've accepted a donation from the Hanover Garden Club in the amount of $75, from Jerry and Pat Balcom in the amount of $100, and Tom and Barbara Paul in the amount of $500 for the Etna Library.
That's right.
I believe we did that and moved that. We also accepted a generous gift from the Byrne Foundation of $6,500 for the Parks and Recreation Department.
For 4th of July celebration.
That's for $3,500 for the Friends, to be used by the Friends of Recreation and 4th of July celebration. And we just heard about an additional gift, $500 from Patricia Atwood and Sarah and Bill Young, and the Dresden School District, the amount of $150 to be used towards the 18 mural project, which we'd like to learn more about. Okay, we need a motion for that last one.
I'll move.
Okay, it's been moved that we
Second.
accept that $500. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jerry?
Peter, it just struck me in reviewing the packet that you've got a number of signed personal checks there as images that are made available to the public. And even if the account number is not visible, which I think in some cases maybe it's been blocked out, but I still think that that represents potential security risk. I know that the school board a number of years ago did not make those available to the public. It could be available to select board members perhaps, but it might be worth considering just to safeguard.
Yeah, I mean, back and
That's a
forth,
good
but you're
idea.
absolutely right.
Yeah.
We've accepted donations, but not named the donor?
No, it's just saying don't photocopy the check.
I can
Don't
see-
photocopy the check.
I can see account numbers.
You know, I think that's a basic, let's not do this again.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, we can put it in the packet for the select board, but not the packet that goes out to the public. That would be,
Yeah.
which is what we started doing this meeting with the elderly exemptions.
Right, but let me get straight. With the elderly exemptions, we just named the address, not the people.
Right.
Here, we want to acknowledge the people that are giving
Right.
the gifts, so,
But not their bank accounts, right?
but not their bank accounts, right?
Yes, because we can clearly see it, so thank you, Karen.
Thank you.
That's not good.
Okay,
That's not.
okay. I think we have Alex, your administrative report.
Okay, I got a couple of updates here. Let's see, so we already kind of covered some town meeting related updates. I'll also say, spent a little bit of time over the last couple of weeks, especially our clerk's office and some of our other election officials getting ready with the new vote tabulators that will be in use. So they are pretty snazzy. I mean, pretty similar to exactly what we're doing, but with screens. And so this is one of 4 towns that are participating in this beta test with the Secretary of State's office. The Secretary of State's office and the vendor will be on site for the whole day for the election on town meeting to make sure everything works. And there are a bunch of improvements in these machines that are most likely going to be, either optioned or required at some point in the future, I would imagine, to replace our slightly aging ones. And these are these scan the same way. So everything is basically exactly the same for the voter, except that when you put it into the machine, there's going to be a screen that says, thank you for voting. So that's really the only difference for the voter, and we have the same physical copies and now digital copies. However, the way that it's being beta tested is basically not all the features are turned on. It's basically being used identically to the way that the tabulators are used currently. The way this state has set this up is that there's these 4 different vendors in 4 towns testing these, and if these work out well, then I believe the state will select 2 of those to be the ones that towns could then just, you know, have the ability to purchase in future years. So a big thank you to our clerk's office, clerk, deputy clerk, all of our election officials, because we've been up here a lot, testing, running ballots through, folding ballots, making weird markings on them, just making sure everything works the right way. And so it's just a lot of attention, a lot of time being spent to make sure all the elections continue to work smoothly in Hanover. Also want to make sure to thank a few of the staff who have spent just a tremendous amount of time preparing for town meeting, not only in the clerk's office, but especially my assistant Carrie, who has put just an enormous amount of time into town meeting and town report and the town warrant. And so she just did a really great job organizing. And for a lot of us, myself, Carrie, the tax collector, our town clerk, we're all doing this in Hanover actually for the first time. So there's a lot of new folks working on a lot of pieces, and a lot of people have stepped up and just done a really good job. So I just wanted to make sure to thank the staff for that tonight. Moving on a bit, select board duties on election day, we already talked about. All right, so I've got a memo that I wrote about this e-scooter ordinance and some traffic safety issues. I will run through it, but not read it, but do a little more than the bullet points in the agenda. The whole thing should be in the packet. Basically, as I've sort of gotten my head above water in the last 2 weeks after budget, and a handful of other issues that have come up over the last couple months, starting to try to get up to speed on some of the things that have been a little bit delayed on my end. And so one of these is putting a few different pieces together, a few different threads of what I think is a similar conversation. So the first is, and there's 5 different pieces to this. One is the process by which we receive complaints about traffic related issues. The second is how we sort of make sure we're integrating between departments, especially on doing forward-looking policy. The third is how we review the standards that we have in place. The fourth is specific issues in downtown and with e-scooters. And then the fifth is issues around state-owned roads. And so this is just a sort of like me getting organized and updating the board. These are not really any final, I think there's a bunch of next steps identified in this document. And one of those next steps is to meet with the bike walk committee and get some feedback before you all are here in June. And we still have a bunch of staff conversations to have, but I felt like I've been a little delayed in updating you all on some of these pieces, so that's the point of this memo. So first, this is not anything particularly revelationary. We've talked about it in the select board a little bit, which is getting complaints in. You know, about 20 years ago, there was a traffic safety kind of policy created that is relatively detailed, but was never put in place from a procedure standpoint. And so, you know, the staff that were involved in that, or the departments that were involved in that, so myself, Public Works, Planning, and Police, have met and talked about how we want to kind of put this back together, getting all the old documents together, scanning things, getting everything in one place, just making sure we know what we have in place already. And then we'll have a new process for taking those complaints in, which again, I know we've talked about here a little bit before. The next is sort of the proactive policy planning piece, which is just trying to identify the different places where people talk about different policies that relate to traffic safety. And so there's, for example, we have several ongoing groups that talk about this on a regular basis. This is town staff, of course, and this working group that we've put back together. The Bike Walk Advisory Committee, of course, the Select Board as a stakeholder. And then we had sort of 2 new opportunities that we're kind of thinking about that would be places where different stakeholders in the community could come together and talk about these things on a regular basis, which is the sort of goal setting and strategic planning that we've talked about beginning as part of the budget process, and also what is, I'll talk about in a moment, which is an every 2-year review of the standards that we have in place.
Can I just point out that we have a planning board that is responsible for doing a master plan that addresses roads in it. So I think that they should be cited. They are an official board. Our advisory boards are just that. The planning boards actually have review power, and they review site plans, develop subdivision regulations, and the master plan. And so they should definitely be part of our governing legislative body review.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, so I just added that bullet point. They should definitely be in there. And I question from the planning board standpoint, and this, maybe some of this will change a little bit with the capital improvement plan committee that will be starting next year. But I guess I'm a little unclear process-wise from the planning board's perspective. Is there a way, are they able to engage in informal conversations about these topics too, not just through like formal application review?
Yeah, I mean, that's what the master plan's all about, is actually planning our roads and how we use our land and how the roads or our infrastructure interacts. I mean, they're the entity in the town that's supposed to do the planning for the community with advisory groups feeding into the master plan.
And how are they connected to like Bike Walk?
So Bike Walk is just an advisory group that was created, and they're supposed to advise the public works. They're the go-to, they meet, they discuss policy, they discuss issues, and bring recommendations to the planning board or the select board. So the planning board is statutorily, they're in the regs, they're the ones that are supposed to be doing the planning for the town, in a town of this size. And so they need to be right up there with the select board. In fact, the select board doesn't really have that authority. It's the planning board that has the authority. The select board appoint planning board members to do the planning. The other entity that I think should be in here in terms of stakeholders is our school district, because they run a bus system and they have, 800 kids going to school, either walking, biking, by cars and transit. So in terms of stakeholders, I think they're as important as Dartmouth. So in terms of your document and your memo.
Yeah, no, and I think something that I will probably want to ask you all in more detail when we kind of get to figuring out this section, which is just how is I guess I'm not totally clear on how all these different entities connect on a regular basis.
So when it comes to even sustainability, they're a committee, but
Who they?
the sustainability.
Oh, okay.
Hanover Sustainability, they're an organization that we put up, the select board created to work on sustainability. But they're not statutorily, they're not authorized through the RSAs. That's just a committee that we've created. They don't really have any review power. Through energy, they've done so much work as a volunteer body. They've solicited, they've done recycling, they've done this amazing energy work, which there has been some statutory things happen as a result of the community power work. But if you look at the RSAs, the select board have a certain amount of authority. The planning board is the entity that does the planning for the community, does the capital improvements plan, creates the land use regulations, site plan review, zoning and subdivision regulations. So they develop the regulations to make sure that our master plan is implemented. And what's great about the planning board is that in Hanover, we've got, Sustainable Hanover, we've got the Bike Walk Committee, we've got the Conservation Committee, all of these guys feed into the planning board. That doesn't mean that you can't have a safety advisory committee that feeds into it. Public Works controls the roads, but the planning board makes recommendations or regulates how land is used with the ZBA and how that affects our roads and safety. Right?
Yes, but he's asking a slightly different question, which is a good question, which is how do all these different entities coordinate their efforts, right?
Right.
Yeah, so I think we can...
Well, I think we should, we can make a chart. but.
I would love that.
I mean, and so the staff, the planning staff supports the planning board, and DPW does to a certain extent. But the planning board is a volunteer entity. It doesn't have a huge amount of time, so it's fine to, stand up the capital improvements planning committee. It's fine to have the advisory committee for biking and walking to feed information to the planning board. But the master plan is like the Bible for the town.
But the sort of ongoing, I mean, I think the chart would be, and in fact, it's something that would be fun as an exercise would be to ask a bunch of people to make that chart and compare our answers.
Yeah.
Because my guess is that, I think there's a lot of informal connection points, and that we're lucky that we have staff like Rob Hausman's a good example where he is connecting a bunch of dots because he knows that those dots need to be connected. And so he's at a lot of these different meetings, for example, but we don't have any SOP written anywhere, and there's not a regular expectation from an advisory committee that there's going to be, you're reviewing these things and we want feedback on just trying to figure out what the connection points are and what the sort of workflows are. And I wonder if that might be something we might want to sort of shore up a little bit.
I think it'd be incredibly valuable, given especially the change in the guard in terms of our staff, because really it's the statutes that authorize these entities. It's state legislation, the laws that have set up this form of government, this public entity. So, statutes enable the work that we do in this town.
And the other thing that happens, Alex, because of the strength of the personality of somebody like a Rob Hausman, so much of this is informal.
Right.
And we don't have groups of people saying, well, every 2 months, you're going to report to me thus, thus, and thus. I think that one of the great strengths of Hanover is that people, exchange information. Everybody knows about the information and so forth, but there aren't, but we're not a bureaucratic, town government to the extent that we're layering on. I'm not in favor of layering on expectations that people are going to have to write reports or be at meetings or create meetings that don't exist today, just because we think that it has to be someplace in a chart.
But, we have talked about the value of having, and over time, having the bike walk committee come in.
Yes.
We've invited them here to speak on, extending the sidewalk out on Lebanon Street. They've come in to talk about various other things. The 2011-2012 master plan, bike plan, was presented to the select board and the planning board and adopted therein. That's what the newest plan that the bike walk committee did was to feed to our new master plan. They did all of this work in public engagement and working with a consultant to feed it into our master plan. So that's a case in point. We've talked about Conservation Commission coming to the planning board on a regular basis to provide information. They've come to the select board before to talk about how we manage our forests. So, but really, you could have a chart, and that would be a really great public service, I think, for people who don't know how the government works.
Okay, so I think the chart is in our future. And so that was sort of, that section was just wanting to, have this conversation and follow up on it. There's probably gonna be a few more conversations, and making sure, if we want reports from certain groups or committees that maybe, we're saying, okay, these are gonna be twice a year at this time and this time, and, just going through that sort of process a little bit. The review of standards, I think this is an important one, which is basically all the local, state, and federal rules that tell us what we can and can't do. Obviously, if we're looking at proactive policymaking or taking a complaint about an issue in, that we need to understand, okay, if we want to raise or lower the speed limit or put a crosswalk or not put a crosswalk, that there's some policy that we're saying, does this meet these criteria? And that those criteria have been developed through a rigorous process, and they've included feedback from stakeholders, and they've included best practices, and it's not just sort of an ad hoc decision. And I think the tricky part with these sorts of things is sometimes standards need to be updated, but they can't be updated every time they don't work for us because then they're not standards anymore. And so I think something we don't have in place, unless I'm totally missing it and the staff aren't aware of it, is having a regular scheduled multi-stakeholder review of the standards. And so that every, I pick 2 years, in this idea that every 2 years, we're spending a couple months, we're getting the right people together, we're looking at what did work, what didn't work over the last couple years. We're basically saying, okay, here's a policy that we created 5 years ago, but this last year we keep running up against it. Is this really serving our best interest anymore? And if not, let's talk about changing it. And then we change it, and then that's the policy for the next 2 years. And same for state and federal policies that we can't change, but if we disagree with them, we could advocate for those changes. And all of this is meant to just try to put more of a schedule to it to make sure that we're not sort of just approaching things as they happen, which I just think is really hard from a policy perspective. And so we don't really have that standards review in place currently, and I think it's important to make sure we are drawing a line in the sand and saying, here's when we want to look at the standards that are in place, here's who we want to be involved to make sure provide the feedback, guidance, and ideas about changing them or not changing them. And then we kind of move forward under those assumptions for the next 2 years. And I think there's a lot that's changing in this world, which is a good thing. But we need to, it just feels like we're not, internally fully organized about how we approach and respond to all those sorts of things. So a good example of that might be the next piece, which is that there's an e-scooter regulation ordinance that the police department has been working on that has now come out to additional town staff, and we're giving some feedback on that. I think the next step is sharing that either with the select board or with the bike walk advisory committee. I don't get the sense that the planning board weighs in on, even though so that's part of making sure we just clearly delineate who's kind of doing what and when and why. But reviewing an ordinance that would attempt to regulate e-scooters basically the same way that we do bikes. The problem is that they're not allowed to be on the sidewalks. And so then you move into the street, but our streets are not very safe either, especially for scooters, not really for bikes as well. But certainly for scooters that don't have the same visibility as a bike might have, that asking people to ride that down Main Street is tough. And so basically, but we can't do nothing because we have had serious injuries, and we get many complaints about bikes and e-scooters or regular scooters on the sidewalks. And we've had serious injuries and one death from that in the past. But again, the other solution isn't great, but there's no other option other than sidewalk or street at this point in time. So we have a couple different ideas in here that I wanted to throw out that we're looking at. So one is looking at an ordinance that does regulate e-scooters and does things like require that people follow the same traffic laws that a bicyclist would have to follow, and encourage people to have reflective clothing. We're even working more informally with some of the stakeholders at Dartmouth, just offering the idea that if a team is going to buy a jacket or something, that maybe there's something reflective on the jacket, so if people are wearing it at night, it's a little easier to see. We know there's some dark spots. There's just things like that as well, but we need some sort of regulation for that. But it doesn't really feel fair to just push the scooters into the street. And so what we're talking about is, we think we have about $15,000 or $20,000 currently that we can use to paint better sharrows in the street. Rob Hausman has identified a sort of preliminary list of areas in the downtown that we're looking at that we'll want to get some feedback on as well. I'm basically saying if we're going to ask people to ride in the street, the bare absolute minimum that we really need to do, I don't feel comfortable pushing people into the street without at least putting some paint and signage on the street. It does not go that far, but it's definitely better than nothing. And unfortunately, we don't have the labor in-house to do that this year, so we do have to contract out for that. But that actually may help because we don't have the labor to do all of our line striping this year. And so we may, depending on where that contract comes out, we may ask a company to come in and do a little bit of extra work for us and get a little bit more line painting done this year. We'll have to maintain those sharrows. That's about $15,000 a year. And we don't have the staff, even at full staffing, we don't have the staff to do that. So that is a cost that we'd have to absorb going forward. But again, it feels like the right thing to do. It's this bare minimum. The more midterm solution that I would like to make, not a long-term solution, but make a midterm solution, is expedite the reconstruction of Main Street. In fact, actually, I met with our Congresswoman this morning talking about some of the funding avenues that there might be available for projects like that. But this is something that would be really challenging to self-fund through our existing capital program. It would take years and years of saving. I don't know how many exactly, probably think maybe 5 to 7 years of making contributions into our capital reserves to be able to spend a couple $1 million to actually redo enough of the Main Street to make a big difference, right? Doing one block doesn't make a big difference if you have to go out and then go back onto the sidewalk or street right after that block. And so doing a big chunk at one time is really important. And so what we're sort of throwing out there is, you know, this has been discussed since 2019. There were some ideas circulated. I cut a few out into the memo, and I can circulate that study that was done. There is a section on the website that has a video and some pictures and a memo from 2019 when this was talked about. And this basically is widening sidewalks, creating a protected lane, and probably converting most of the angled spaces into parallel spaces. So this something that, again, has been talked about for more than 4 years. And what we're sort of saying is, you know, let's plan on next year. We're recommending for discussion or to you all, but from the staff standpoint, let's, you know, put the money in, let's do it. Let's just do the whole project. We have to redo the sidewalks anyway. Carl, you brought that up a couple meetings ago in the budget conversations, that you really hope we don't end up doing with asphalt, which doesn't look great and is not that durable. And so we have to do the sidewalks anyway. If we're going to be doing concrete work on sidewalks, you know, when I talked to Pete about it, the idea is, well, let's just do the whole thing. Let's do sidewalks, let's do curbs, let's do the lane, let's redo the street, let's do, you know, one big project. It's going to be super disruptive no matter what we do to businesses, to traffic, and so it might be easier to just do it in one shot rather than stretch it out over a long period of time. And that is the, you know, that's the, you know, the best solution, you know, other than us all having non-personal vehicles, which, you know, I don't know how many years we may be away from that, but in between now and then, if that's a thing that happens here, at least creating protected lanes where people can use bikes, scooters, roller skates, unicycles, anything else. Would make a lot of sense. And so we do have that sort of short and medium term, and again, the medium term is sort of proposed as a medium term, not a long term, and let's, you know, get it done as soon as we can. There's going to be, you know, a multi-million-dollar cost associated with that, but again, we save a little bit of money if we do it at the time that we have to do the sidewalks anyway. So that's the fourth piece. The fifth piece is the conversation around state roads, which I understand I am coming in, you know, many years after these conversations have happened, and I'm sure I'm doing that in some of these other areas. So I'm trying to do my best to learn the histories, of course, but I know a lot of these conversations have been had for years, and I know this is one of them. There are a section, although my memo says 5 sections, and then I have 6 bullet points, so that's not right. But there are 6 sections of road that are owned by the state. Several of those are probably not that relevant to these kind of conversations. You know, for example, Line Road up on the north end of town. But most of these are sections that would, if there was local control, would have a huge impact on the future of how those roads look. It is an enormous cost associated with that we should, what we're sort of proposing is that we really study this and kind of make some, at least put the data out, and whether it's a select board or town meeting or planning, I'm not really sure who the right stakeholders are, but from a staff standpoint, at least do the work, get the numbers as close as we can get to what the estimates are, engage stakeholders, talk about the pros and cons, because this could be a really long-term benefit to the community, especially if we did this with Lebanon and we had our urban compact zones meet each other at the Hanover-Lebanon line. I mean, we could have local control, in theory, over a whole bunch of roads that we don't have local control over right now. In my conversations with the NHDOT, which were pretty vague, but were about this, I mean, they would love to have someone else take care of this. Of course, Pete Kalbaki and his, the level of analysis he's already done is, whoa. There's a lot of questions we have to ask, a lot of bridges, a lot of culverts. These roads are not paved to the standards that we pave roads to. So we would really need some investment from the state and probably some cost sharing, but that might be enough. I mean, even splitting the cost maybe is something that the state, and then they don't have to send the plows out there. There's a lot of potential benefits. And, you know, from the staff standpoint, I think these are conversations for stakeholders in the community to have. What is the pro and con here? I don't know the answer. We can put the numbers together. I can't make the decision on behalf of the community about what's right or wrong, but rather do the work so that people can be informed about making that decision. And so that is something that we have a little bit of money in the budget, in next year's budget, to do this, to do some of this analysis. And I would, unless folks don't want us to, I will sort of, you know, move forward with the expectation that we're going to put that together at some point and come back to select board most likely, and or anybody else, and think about what the pros and cons of that are, how things could be financed, et cetera. So those were the different threads. I just felt like there were these few different pieces over the last couple months that I've been a little delayed and disorganized on. I wanted to get them all in one place, give you all an update, talk about some next steps. I've met and talked to staff about it, reached out to talk to Bike Walk as well. Select board, if there's anybody else I should loop in, happy to, as we try to just figure out what to do here.
Well, as I've discussed, my only concern is creating expectations.
About the state roads?
Yeah, particularly the state roads. I mean, we've been around this a few times and the numbers were staggering. So even asking the question might create expectations that we later won't meet. That's my only concern about it. Because information is valuable, so. Okay. Sure, these are all big subjects. These are all big initiatives that we need to be at least aware that we're starting on. And we should probably talk a little bit about priority of these at some point and where they fit on your priority list.
Okay.
And some initial feedback at some point, but not tonight.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think from my perspective, all of these things, there's like definitely a theme, I think, to all of these, which is just, I don't want, I'm trying to, as best as possible, look at ways that we can organize and systematize some of these decisions so that we basically, if we want to address something, to kind of address it or not address it and then kind of move on and not have, you know, to me, some of the traffic stuff where it's at right now, it feels like it's semi-resolved, but not fully resolved, but not resolved. There's been some work in some areas that's been really beneficial and valuable, but not the whole, and just trying to put those pieces together and say, is this something we want to, you know, have the full conversation about? So, I've got a few more things in my report here. And so I guess on that note, just because that's a big thing, I will be back here at some point. I think Bike Walk, we were talking about the end of June, right? Was it 26th?
Yeah, it might be the 5th, like, getting back and forth.
All right, let me know which, I think whatever one works from my end. So, and so maybe we can try and chat before then if that's helpful. Maybe that doesn't matter from a milestone perspective, but if you want to try to meet before you're here.
Oh, sure.
But we don't have to do it that way. Okay, so a couple HR updates. Okay, so talk about priorities. This is a huge one. This is like top 2 or 3 on my list and our HR director's list for the next 6 months. This is an enormous undertaking of time and energy, not on us, but also for all of our staff. So this is kind of phase 2 of the salary study that we started last year. We have now, as of this week, we have begun the plan, the project. We had our first department meetings today, and we are having, I'm facilitating the Parks and Rec one tomorrow. We're having our town hall one on Wednesday. So we are off to the races this week. We have the project broken into 6 different sections. There's 6 different teams. And so they're by building. We have town hall as one. There's a lot of smaller departments in town hall, and it's town hall not including parking. Then police, including parking, is another team. Fire is another one. Parks and Rec is another one. Public Works, which includes water and wastewater, is another one, and then HAL and Etna is another one. And we are calling them teams because there is a point system that we have that we will be tracking staff participation and offering some rewards at the end for different teams and staff who cross certain thresholds of participating with surveys and meetings. Over the next 6 months, we've broken down, or 7 months really, we've broken down into 6 or 7 different subjects. The first is how departments set their goals and understand their needs, which includes looking at tables of organizations and job descriptions. The next is how we advertise and recruit for positions. The next is onboarding. The next is retention and advancement. The next is offboarding, and then the last month is looking at the salary study data that we will have gotten back by that point, and basically finalizing values and goals from the staff before we finish with department heads and select board working on changes that would then go right into it in November and December, collective bargaining negotiations and the budget for next year. And so it's all timed out that way. And what we're basically doing is in the first week of the month, and some of this may change a little bit as we go, but just to give a sense of the structure and the amount of time that everybody's spending on this, the first week of the month is this team or department meeting where people get together. Management is allowed in that meeting, so department heads are able to be there. We still have our twice monthly department head meetings outside of this process where we are going over with department heads what's happening. Departments meet and we talk about whatever the topic is, and we ask questions and we send stuff people ahead of time, and then there's surveys ahead of time and surveys afterwards. And it's about an hour-and-a-half meeting at different times a day. We cannot get all staff in every meeting, but we're trying the best as possible to get between shifts at the police department or do a night one or an early one. We're trying as best as possible to get as many people looped in. But then over the next 2 weeks, mostly HR will be following up with employees one-on-one, having conversations, following up on the department meetings. And so those are also opportunities for staff who are not able to make it to a meeting to have a one-on-one conversation where they can share the same feedback that was discussed during the department meeting. Then at the end of the month, one representative from each department comes to a steering committee meeting where management is not there, so there are no department heads there, other than myself and the HR director. We are facilitating, me and Katie are facilitating all of these meetings, so one of us facilitates each department meeting, and then both of us facilitate the sort of steering committee meeting, and that allows each department to provide feedback, which we're then collecting into notes, which will then inform the policy recommendations going forward. It is a really involved process, but I've talked about it with a lot of folks and a lot of town managers, and although I think there are some out there who say, you're opening yourself up to a lot of feedback, and we say, yeah, we are, and that's sort of the goal. And I've gotten notes from staff already who appreciate that we are involving them to this degree in this process. So I think this is going to build a lot of really cool camaraderie within departments and also between departments, getting staff to see that the needs of the fire department and the library and public works are all different. And and we want to try and get people talking to each other and learning from each other through this process as well. As that all happens, there's going to be a few interruptions to hours in some of the buildings. So like, for example, our meeting on Wednesday in Town Hall, there is no way we can do this without closing Town Hall, so we're closing Town Hall between 12 and 1. That's going to happen, I think, a couple times throughout this at various points where there's just no way to really not do that without having, without making a staff person not be able to participate, which doesn't really seem fair. I also included a small chart of the onboards and offboards for the last 4 years and the projection for this year, which is less than last year, but also more than the previous years, based on our year-to-date numbers. So we have there's a lot of movement happening, in our organization staff-wise. A lot of things are changing, and some of these, part of what I think you're seeing from me in coming here and asking to organize through some systems is that as people are leaving who had all of that knowledge in their heads, it's not always written down, and as new people come in, we're kind of recreating the wheel a little bit, and we want to write some of this stuff down and make sure we're a little more set up. We were lucky for decades to not have a ton of turnover, but that's not the case right now, and it's probably not going to be the case for I don't know what the future holds exactly, but it's certainly not going to be the case in the short term. So that's a big part of this. A sub-point to that is the DPW summer work schedule, which I won't read through, but if folks want it, it's in the agenda packet, it's on our website. This is the work that Public Works is planning to do for the summer. This is road work, sidewalk work, regrading, bridge work, things of that nature. Pete, as per usual, did a great job putting together all the numbers here and kind of adding everything up, and And basically, we put a red line, which is how far we think we're likely to get this year. We have 5 openings in our highway division in Public Works, which is more than it has been in many years. I'm not sure we've ever had that many openings, actually, since Pete's been here. And so there are a couple projects that are important projects, but probably won't get done this year. We are working with Public Works and Parks and Rec, the 2 that have these major persistent vacancies, in trying to figure out how to get people into those positions without raising compensation, when it throws off the entire study. So we're kind of just at a tough moment in that regard. So I won't go any more into that, but if people have any questions about it, I can answer them, or I can certainly ask Pete to come back and talk a little bit more about it. A couple other quick updates. We have one final thing that wasn't done on our website, which is that some of our older minutes and agendas didn't get moved over. A couple of years got missed somehow, so they are moving those over. That is the last piece, and then the website will be ready to go. There's going to be a few small changes that we're going to make. So any day now, I will email everybody and let you know that we've got a new town website. Maybe this week. I included a little picture. I spoke at this ICMA conference in Burlington a couple weeks ago, which, oh man, that was on those 80-degree days, which was just, I could not believe, you know, obviously, it was just amazing to be in that warm weather and be around colleagues and get to talk about all the stuff that we're working on. And so, you know, I was presenting a session on public engagement and podcasts and using technology to try to communicate information, and we broke up into groups, and people had, there's very interesting ideas different towns were doing, and it was just I love those opportunities of like getting together and, you know, see what different people do. And there's another town that has a podcast that was interesting, some had a radio show. I mean, it's just interesting, the different mediums. Big differences between communities that had TV channels and didn't, and all sorts of cool stuff. And it was just a good chance to see some of our neighbors as well, and work. And actually, there's 1 or 2 ideas that came up that we are now working on, like with Lebanon. Also, we had 2 firefighters that were promoted as of April 16th. And so that is John Emerson and Blair Weathers. John Emerson promoted from lieutenant to captain, Blair Weathers from firefighter to lieutenant, so congratulations to both of them for that. And then just had a short downtown Hanover update, which really is meant to just say that if there's any business owner who's listening to any of these things and wants to participate, we are meeting every Monday, every month, the first Thursday at 8 a.m. The location's going to change, but if anybody wants to get added, we have a Google Groups now for downtown businesses. If anybody wants to get added to that, any business owner or property owner or anything downtown, just let me know and I'll add you to that list. And that is cool to see that.
Okay,
and
thank you.
That's it.
Wow.
Covered a lot of territory there.
Yeah.
There's an awful lot to be discussed there, one at a time. Any questions of the actual report? Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Selectboard reports. Matt?
Actually, perhaps if it's okay with the board, I would defer to the Hanover Bike Chair, because I was unable to attend the meeting this afternoon. Or I can just highlight and say, there was a great bike rodeo yesterday at the elementary school.
Please, come on, help yourself.
Can you
Help us.
So we had a bike rodeo that just helped kids learn how to ride bikes. A bunch of kids came, had a bunch of fun, navigated cones, practiced braking, practiced turning. There were a lot of volunteers out from the race school as well, which was great. And the firefighters came and the police came by. So it was kind of like a nice community event. So while the Dartmouth students were chopping logs and riding around in circles, we also had our own little town rodeo going on too. So that was a lot of fun. We had the Tri-Shaw, which is a really kind of cool thing we borrowed from Lebanon, which is it's an electric bike where you pedal and there's sort of 2 seats in front. It's like a Surrey. You know, if you've ever ridden a Surrey on a boardwalk. And we invited seniors to come take some rides, and some canceled at the last moment because of the cold weather. But the ones who did make it out really enjoyed it, so we're hoping to do that again. And Lebanon said we could borrow it again. So we're looking for ways to tie it into some other events we have coming up. We were talking to the e-bike lending library committee about possibly having that too, depending on where we're hosting our events, trying to go out into the community for the e-bike lending library, which will be coming up in late June. But before that, we have coming up, it's Bike Month, so happy Bike Month, everyone. And so our bike rodeo was well-timed right before Bike Month, because Walk and Bike to School Day is coming up on Wednesday, so that's important. See a bunch of kids walking and biking, wave and congratulate them for walking and biking to school. And then on May 19th is what's known in the Upper Valley as Curb Your Car Day, and nationally is known as Bike to Work Day. And so we'll be celebrating that as well, and working with the police, who have said they will help us track some speed data, as well as provide us with some signs, and DPW, who's gonna give us those tall cone delineators, the tall cones. We're going to mark the bike lane that comes into town on Lebanon. And there's a bike lane there, but the paint kind of wears away as you go around turns. And that's where people feel, come to us and say they feel a bit unsafe. So we're gonna provide a delineated bike lane as a demonstration project on that day. And Dartmouth Bikes is going to help spread the word on that. And DPW is loaning us their giant signs to flash some sort of message that we're still crafting to also promote that. And then hopefully we'll use the town listserv. But that should be a fun day. And hopefully people who are not comfortable riding will maybe take that opportunity sometime on that day to see if it's better or if it's not with those delineators. So that's what's going on.
Thanks, Jenny.
Yeah.
That's it.
So your, excuse me, your planning board is meeting in this room at 7:30 tomorrow. We're going to have a couple of minor subdivision votes, which you're quite accustomed to, but I want to alert the citizenry that this is going to be the final, tomorrow's going to be the final review for the owners at 14 West Wheelock for submitting an application for a major site plan review. We've done so a couple of other months, but people should know that this is the final review.
Okay. I have nothing to report. Bill?
Nothing to report.
Okay, other business. I want to recognize Bill Garrity tonight. This is his last meeting. He's been extremely quiet in his last meeting. And
He's dancing in his
he's just dancing in his head, right? So what are you going to do with all your Monday nights, Bill?
I'll have to find out what's going on, but
Hey, we stream the meetings.
that's right. I can watch, but
Well, Bill has been mine, and I think a little bit, I've been his wingman for the last, how many years, Bill?
11 and a half.
11 and a half years. So we'll be celebrating a bit at the town meeting, but I just didn't want this meeting to go by without recognizing 11 and a half years of great service.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other business, board? There's been a request for a non-public session to discuss items pursuant to RSA 91A, 3A, C, E, and L.
Bill Garrity, yes?
Peter Christie, yes.
Nancy Carter, yes?
Joanna Rayton, yes.
We are in non-public session. Thank you all.
Thank you.
If a person has